Hi, I'm Chris Nesi from the House of Edtech podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual host. And make sure to check out all the other great podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com. And now, the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome in episode 7 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast, where today my guest is Carly Moura, and we will chat about ways that students can share about historical figures and build skills for their future careers, as well as some awesome templates, a cool Chrome extension, Scratch, an amazing computer science curriculum, and, most importantly, find out if Sean Fahey and Carly Moura are really EdTech BFFs. Here we go!
Welcome to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast with Jake Miller.
Hello, duct tapers. I almost ended that little pre-music intro with Samuel L. Jackson's famous "Hold On to Your Butts" from the original Jurassic Park. I chickened out when I was doing that, but I'm adding it here for fun. I hope you like that. I think I'm kind of bearing the lead here, so to speak. The real news that I should be kicking this off with is the special bumper that you heard at the very beginning. Yes, you heard that right. The Educational Duct Tape Podcast is now part of the Education Podcast Network. The founder of the network, Chris Nesi, who you heard in that intro bumper, reached out to me recently and invited me to join, and wow, I'm just honored to join the ranks of Chris's shows, House of Edtech and Podcast PD, and some of my other favorites, including the Google Teacher Tribe, Shooks and GIF, and the Cult of Pedagogy podcasts. Wow, I'm just psyched. You could see all of the shows that are part of the network at edupodcastnetwork.com. I'm just honored to be a part of that group. Speaking of things that I'm psyched about, the feedback and shout outs that I've heard from many of the duct tapers out there keeps my heart warm in this cold Ohio winter. At the end of this show, I'll be sharing some of my favorite #EDU duct tape tweets, a few posts from the Educational Duct Tape FlipGrid community, and a review from on Apple Podcasts. Another thing that I've heard from a few people is, Jake, where the heck are your show notes? Well, see, what had happened was, I feel like I'm a student making excuses for not doing my homework here. I do put in detailed show notes, but they only show up in certain apps. I really don't know why. Anyhow, for those of you who can't find them, you can get to all of them at eduducttape.libsyn. That's LIBSYN.com. eduducttape.libsyn.com, which I'll also put a link to at the top of the eduducttape.com page. So you can go to eduducttape.com and click on that link. In the near future, I hope to have an easier spot for you to access the show notes, but there are only so many minutes in the day. To be honest, I'm just glad that you're finding enough value in the show to want to track down the show notes. So thanks for that. So in last week's episode, I talked about a school that I spoke at a few months ago and will be returning to next fall. That led to a number of people reaching out to me to ask if speaking, presenting, and leading workshops was something that I did. And you know what? It not only is something that I do, it just happens to be one of my favorite things to do. Feel free to reach out to me at jakemillertech@gmail.com to chat about planning something for your school, school district, group, conference, bingo night, family reunion, Mardi Gras party, or bar mitzvah. Well, maybe not those last few, but just reach out to me at jakemillertech@gmail.com and we'll see if we can work something out. So I mentioned the Educational Duct Tape FlipGrid community. One thing that I love seeing in there is when duct tapers share their questions for me and my guests to follow up on, and then another duct taper jumps right in and answers it. So today I want to share a question from Abby Thomas, as well as my response, and then a response from Michael Feldman. So here goes Abby.
Hey y'all, I'm Abby Thomas from Alabama, and I'm a technology integration specialist for DeKalb County Schools. And one thing that I think would be a great topic for a podcast would be some video making tools. Now I know as I go to all the different schools that I serve, some have iPads, some have Chromebooks, some have desktops, and some can use their phones and some can't use their phones. And so I see a lot of different options, but I don't really have a good answer to what they can use to create and to edit videos. I know WeVideo is one option, but they limit it so much in the free version. So I just wonder, is there something out there that would be a good fit for all of my students? Anyway, that's a great idea that I'd like to hear more about. Thanks.
All right, great question from Abby. If you have your students making videos, that's just good stuff right there. So as long as the platform that you choose to use works, that's all that really matters, because having them make videos is really the important part. My answer to that question, Abby actually said it in there, would be WeVideo. And the reason that I would suggest WeVideo is because, number one, it's really easy to use. Number two, if you have the paid version, it does a lot. Like, it does green screening, it does screencasting, it does voice recording, it has some pretty great stuff in the media library that you can put into your videos, but also because it works on pretty much any internet-ready device. So it works on Chromebooks, it works on phones, it works on iPads, it works on Android devices, it'll work on your Mac, it'll work on your PC. So it's nice that kids can be on any device and be able to use them. So in a school district that has a lot of different devices, or where the kids are using different devices at home, it's a really flexible tool for them to use. I know their free version is a little bit limiting, but I'm going to share a little bit of a trick here that people haven't realized about WeVideo. Their schools plan, last I looked, was $200 a year for 30 seats. Now, that's not for 30 students, that's for 30 seats. And those seats work the same way that the seats in your classroom work. You might only teach 30 kids per period, but you might teach 120 kids in the course of a day. So those seats change who's sitting in them, and it works the same way for those WeVideo plans. So you could have 30 different students using those paid accounts at any given time, but then when they're done with them, you can move it to a different set of 30 students. And then those other students move back to having free accounts. They retain what they created while they were in the paid version, but they just can't make the paid stuff like green screening and things like that during that portion of time. So as long as you're not having massive amounts of students using WeVideo at any one time, the 30-seat plan actually works just fine for a school. You just transition kids into and out of the paid plans as you need them. Now, if you need a whole lot of plans, or if funding's just not available, then WeVideo might not be an option. So let's hear what Mike Feldman shares as some of his options.
Hey Abby, my name is Mike. I'm a tech integration coach at charter school on the west side of Cleveland. We use spark.adobe.com for our video editing. The other thing is, if the kids have options for YouTube, I've heard that YouTube has a great video editor. I hope this helps. Bye.
So thank you to Michael for that response there, and he has two great suggestions there, which kind of have different usage scenarios. Adobe Spark videos are wonderful for creating some basic, quick, easy to create videos with kind of some pre-made recipes that Adobe Spark has in there. You can make really cool things, so it's definitely worth checking out. It might not be the option if you want to make really long videos or edit some long pieces of video or green screen or things like that, but it could be the solution. It all depends on what your goal is, which is what Educational Duct Tape is all about. The other option you talked about there, the YouTube editor, it's going under a transition right now as they move over to what's called YouTube Studio, and it's in beta right now, but they're working on at least having the features of being able to trim your video, and as well as take out parts out of the middle of the video, add and edit end screens to the video. They're going to be adding things like being able to blur things and blur faces out of the video, and add cards that pop up at certain parts of the video, but still not the robust features that you'd get in something like iMovie or something like that. So my recommendation really would be WeVideo, but I'm interested to hear if any other duct tapers out there have any other solutions that they would suggest. The problem with things like iMovie or Final Cut Pro or things like that, while they're wonderful and we would love to have students able to use them, they're not widely available and don't really go from platform to platform. If you have the opportunity to use those in your classroom, that's certainly wonderful. But that's why I like something like WeVideo that I could just kind of blanket recommend to everybody. But certainly if you're using things that are more sophisticated than that, then more power to you, and that's great for your students as well. So a reminder there that Educational Duct Tape FlipGrid community will try to get to at least one audience-submitted question every episode. Sometimes we'll do less than one, which would be 0, Jake, and sometimes we'll do more than one. But I just love hearing what you have to say in there. So please consider heading over to eduducttape.com and submitting some feedback or a question in there. Wow, look at us getting deep into the educational duct tape before the 10-minute mark. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me just grab my soapbox from over here. Yeah. There we go. That's perfect. Climb up on there. The air is so much finer up here on my soapbox. So today I'd like to talk a little about the R factor. Not like pirate, like R. We're going to talk about two big R words that I think have a role in educational duct tape. The first comes from an equation that I first heard from Tim Kite and his organization Focus 3. When he talks about the R factor, he is referring to response. I wear one of his organization's E plus R equals O bracelets every day because it helps me remember that I don't have control over the E, the event, but I do have control over the R, my response, and that can allow me to affect the O, the outcome. E plus R equals O. In every interaction that I have as a technology integration coach or educational leader, I focus on the outcome, the O, that I want, and then think about the necessary response, the R, that I need to employ based on the events, the E, that are in place. Another R that I like to focus on is reflection. This isn't part of Tim Kite's equation or message, though I'm sure that he'd agree with its importance. Educators have to be reflective professionals. If you're not reflecting, you're not giving yourself a chance to grow. Well, I want to talk about a time in my past as an educator where I utilized the events that I identified in my reflection to guide my response and steer the outcome. It was my first year as a middle school STEM teacher. All of my classes had gone just fine until I got the class. You know the class. The what was in the water 13 years ago class. The did I do something to anger the guidance counselor who created this roster class? Seriously, it was rough. Well, a couple weeks into this time with this rough class, I finally sat down to honestly reflect. There's one key R word. And when I reflected, when I really honestly reflected and thought about the difficulties that I was having with these students, a light bulb went off. You see, I started picturing the class and identifying which students were giving me problems and when they were giving me problems. And I soon realized that 99% of the problems I was having came from either students who were highly capable and were bored with the pace that I was leading the class at, or were struggling and were too frustrated to even try and keep up. All of those Goldilocks students, you know the ones, the instructional pace and challenge level is just right for them, they were behaving just fine. But the kids who were waiting for my instruction to catch up with them, they were goofing off. The kids who were embarrassed by their struggles and couldn't keep up, they chose to goof off instead of risk embarrassment. And that honest reflection told me something. I was to blame here, not the students. I was the professional. This was my job. I can't change the students that I'm given. That was the E in my equation. You have no control over it. I can't compromise the outcome that I wanted for all of the students in the room. That was the O in my equation. But I could change my response based on my reflection. That was the R in my equation, the R factor. So what did I do? I created a student-paced course. All of the activities that made up the course were listed in order on a Google site. Each activity was a link to a Google Doc, or Google Slides, or YouTube video, or something that gave the students the instructions they needed to complete the activity. And when they finished one activity, they moved on to the next activity. It was seamless, except for when it wasn't. Because, you see, designing a student-paced course for 13 and 14-year-olds is great until you realize that they've gone through 8 or 9 years of school that most likely were not student-paced. So I had to build in some scaffolds. I'm going to continue this story, because it's a long one, but a good one, over the next few episodes. For now, let's welcome in our guest.
Today's guest.
All right, today our guest is Carly Moura. Carly is a teacher on special assignment in the Mount Diablo Unified School District in Northern California. She currently provides support to teachers integrating technology and teaches computer science to all K-5 students at Sun Terrace Elementary STEM Magnet School in Concord, California. You could follow Carly on Twitter at Carly Moura. That's Carly with a K, KarlyMoura. Her blog is at carlymoura.blogspot.com. You could find all of her PD resources at bit.ly/CarlyMoura or connect with her at kdmoura@gmail.com. And of course, this will all be in the show notes, so you can find it all there. Hey, Carly, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. We were talking before we started recording about our temperature differences in the two places we're at. What is it there again?
57.
57. I think we're at about -3 here.
Sorry.
That's Fahrenheit here in Ohio, but I'm supposed to be at school right now and I'm home. So that's good news, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
So two things I want to touch on before we dig into the meat of the episode with Carly are the FlipGrid ebook and Wakelet ebook that she's a part of. So Carly, along with last week's guest, Sean Fahey, has co-written 3 different versions of a ebook for teachers about using FlipGrid. So it's on version 3 right now. You can find it at bit.ly/FlipGrid ebook 3, the number 3. And again, that'll be in the show notes. Carly, can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
So when Sean and I started using FlipGrid, we were talking about how we could maybe help teachers when we go and present it or online. And I went to him and I said, hey, what do you think about writing an ebook, an educator's guide to FlipGrid? And he's like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. And then I went on the resources page and I said, well, Sean, I don't know. It seems like they have all the resources already on their resources page, on their blog. I don't know that we really need this. And he's like, oh, we already had started it. We already started working. He's like, no, we're doing this. And I was like, okay, we'll do it. And it's blown up. We're just so surprised by how many people are still discovering it and still using it, and that are able to take it and print it out for PD or to share it with their colleagues and be able to get started using FlipGrid. So it's very thankful to Sean because I was about to scrap it and he totally said no.
Nice. So it's interesting you say that, though, because in last week's episode, he said it was his idea.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
He didn't. I'm poking the bear right now. I'm trying to cause trouble.
Of course you are.
So I think the reason it blew up more so than you expected it to is because you guys wrote it as educators. FlipGrid is a really education friendly company. Like they get teaching, whereas there's other ed tech companies out there that maybe don't quite to that level. But still, you guys wrote it. It's not like a technical guide. It's an educator's guide. So I think that's why it is so widely used. It's a great tool.
Yeah, it was fun to write. Every time they update it, Sean and I are like, oh, and they do a lot of updates because then we update the ebook itself. But yeah, FlipGrid's great. The company is fantastic, and it's such a great community. We're very honored to be a part of it.
I agree. I definitely have the FlipGrid fever. And then you guys kind of spun that off into a Wakelet ebook too, right?
We did. We with some other educators that we worked with. Paul West, Randall Sampson, Claudio Zavala Jr., Jennifer Saarinen, John Bimmerly, Sean, Scott Titmus, and I have all written the Wakelet, the Educator's Guide to Wakelet ebook, because we kind of see Wakelet going in that same direction that FlipGrid has, where teachers can take it and use it in so many ways in their classroom. And so we decided to write an Educator's Guide to Wakelet as well. And I think it's gotten some attention, and we're excited to have teachers help to use it and to be able to provide professional development and then to share it with their colleagues in an easy way and just say, okay, you want to try Wakelet? Here you go. Here's an ebook that will hopefully answer most of your questions.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that one because Wakelet, unless I'm mistaken, was not initially an ed tech tool. They were just a technology tool that educators kind of started finding value in. And so it's nice to have something like that written from an educational perspective like you guys, because when we look at the tool, you might be like, oh, that's a great way to curate your resources, or that's a great way to save all the tweets that you want to go back and research later. But the uses in the classroom might not be as obvious on the cover, So having a book that kind of goes over some of those ideas, I think will be really helpful for educators.
Right. And we have taken the first wave of Wakelet ambassadors have also helped. They looked over the ebook before it was published and added a bunch of great stuff. And there are some amazing people out there using Wakelet in really cool ways. So awesome. The ambassador community has been huge too in helping us provide resources that we could push out through the ebook.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of excitement around both of those tools. So you can find those at bit.ly/FlipGrid ebook 3 and bit.ly/Wakelet ebook, which someday I'm sure there'll be a 2 and a 3 on the end of that one too, right?
Probably. Don't tell Sean. Don't tell Sean.
So last week on Sean's episode, Sean told you weren't allowed to listen to the episode yet, so you're going to be able to listen to it later. But I tortured Sean into a spontaneous game of what I'm now calling the Edtech Buddy game. And it's essentially the newlywed game, except you guys are not married. I don't want to start any drama about that or anything. So I asked Sean 2 questions about you, and he very painfully, awkwardly, nervously tried to answer the two questions. I felt bad for him. I could almost see him through the microphone squirming on the other end as he tried to answer him. So now that I picked on Sean, we're going to see how he did. We're going to see if he was right. Are you up for that?
I'm definitely up for it.
Okay, so my first question for Sean was, what topping does Carly like on her pizza?
Oh no. Oh geez, what would Sean say?
What would be your answer?
My favorite topping is I like Hawaiian pizza, so ham and pineapple.
Ham and pineapple. Let's see how he did. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Oh, she's from California. So, and I don't think she's going to go like really big, heavy into, like a lot of toppings. I think she's, probably something more along with vegetables. That's all I'm going to say is vegetables. Maybe some mushrooms, throw that in there.
She's got like some spinach and Alfredo sauce and some like
exactly.
Roma tomatoes around there.
I think so. I think you're exactly right.
I think he was worried about saying you had like a bunch of sausage and pepperoni and extra cheese on there. He wanted to make it a more ladylike pizza, so he wanted a bunch of vegetables for you.
You did pretty well. That would be like my next choice. So I think you do well.
Okay. All right. So my next question that Sean answered is, what is Carly currently binging on Netflix?
Oh goodness. Okay, so what am I actually binging on Netflix?
Sure. Yep.
Well, I have a 7-year-old, and we've been binge watching this TV show that's only available in the UK, and it's called The Worst Witch, and we absolutely love it. And that's what we've been watching on Netflix.
I've seen that show. We've watched it here too.
Have you really?
Yeah.
We love it. We absolutely love it. And now I've been trying to get my friends at Wakelet. I'm like, how can I watch season 3? Because there's the 3rd season. It started in January, and we really want to see it, but it's not available on Netflix till July. I heard. So that's. Do
you think that was Sean's guess? I think Sean's guess was, I think she's watching The Worst Witch on Netflix. Do you think?
I don't think. Sean probably said Friends. Is what I think.
Let's see what he said here. Hold on.
That's kind of hard because I don't have Netflix.
Oh, it's every TV show. So guess a TV show.
Friends. Because she tweets out and a lot of GIFs on. Did I say that right? Friends.
Hey, I was right. I knew what he would say that
right.
I was watching.
I think we'll count that as 1 for 2.
I would say that. I would say that's right. He's absolutely right. I do binge watch Friends. Currently, though, we're obsessed with this Worst Witch show. So I give Sean some credit. He did pretty well.
Right. And did you know? Have you realized that Friends is no longer on Netflix?
I did not know that. It was just on.
They took it off on like January 1st, I heard. I actually heard this back in December that it was leaving Netflix.
Oh, because it's too expensive?
I guess. I don't know. I was sad because I like to go back and watch them every now and then.
Luckily, I have all the DVDs, so
good.
I'll just binge watch. Yeah, I know you're worried.
And the board game.
And the board. Yes, I have different versions of the board game as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure do.
Nice. Sean really does know. I now dub the two of you Edtech buddies. I think 50% passage. You are now Edtech buddies officially.
Yay! Awesome. Because before we weren't. It was very touch and go. Our relationship was quite rocky, but now that you've dubbed us Edtech buddies, right. We're in. We're solid. We're solid gold now. Awesome.
Solid gold for sure. Gold. Okay, so next up, let's play a game of 2 truths and 1 lie. So you're going to give me your 3 statements. One of them is a lie. I'm going to try to guess the lie, and I have to tell you in advance, I'm horrible at this game.
Okay.
So let's see how I do.
2 truths and 1 lie.
I am horrible at coming up with things, so let's see how I did with my 2 truths and a lie. Okay, so 2 truths and a lie, and not in that order, or maybe it is in that order. I don't know. We'll see. I am not a founding FlipGrid ambassador. That's one. Super Bowl Sunday is this coming weekend for us as we record this podcast, and I have absolutely no idea who's playing. And the last one is, the first time I saw Matt Miller in real life, I was too afraid to talk to him, and I avoided him for the whole conference.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to guess. I can't believe you're saying that out loud if that's the true one. So I think that I think the last one's true. I think that's true. I think the Super Bowl thing, it is factually this coming weekend as we record right now. I'll believe that you know that it's the Patriots and not the other team. So I think that's true. What was the first one? You were not a founding FlipGrid member?
No, not a founding
FlipGrid ambassador. I think that's the lie. I think you were a founding ambassador.
No, I am not a founding FlipGrid ambassador.
Oh no, FlipGrid drama, and now I don't know the right answer. So the lie is the Super Bowl. You do know who's playing in the Super Bowl.
I have absolutely no idea. I don't know either team, to be perfectly honest with you. The lie is that when I first saw Matt Miller, I definitely did not avoid him for the whole conference. We were in a Q conference and in a huge room full of people. He walked in the door. I was on the other side of the room. I screamed. I ran as fast as I could and I tackled him. And I heard someone across the room say, "Well, Carly just met Matt Miller." Carly saw Matt.
I almost spit out my coffee when you said that you tackled him right there.
I did. I jumped right on him. It was kind of embarrassing, but it's okay.
You totally fangirled. Okay, you had a fangirl moment there.
I definitely did.
That I don't blame you because Matt, like, he just gets it as an educator. Like, I always say that when I read his stuff, like, he just gets it. Like, he understands what's best for kids and what real life is as a teacher. And I don't know, he delivers his message just right for them. You know what I mean? He's just so good at what he does. So I don't blame you. I when I first met Matt, I didn't tackle him. But I
missed out.
But I did fanboy a little bit.
Yeah. You next time you see him, he's used to it now. So just run across the room and just jump on him as hard. Yeah, it's great. You should do it.
Okay. All right. Let's jump right into the educational duct tape now. So I think right now we're probably at about 13 or 14 listeners to the show. We go up 1 or 2 every time. People keep telling their friends.
Awesome.
So for those 2 or 3 new people, I'm going to explain educational duct tape really quick. So educational duct tape is my weird metaphor that says that educational technology is at its best when it's not the goal of a lesson, but it's a tool used to solve a problem, meet a goal, address a learning standard, or maybe address a need that you have in the classroom, kind of the way duct tape performs the same purpose in our everyday lives. You don't go around using duct tape. You try to fix the things that are broken. And if duct tape is the right tool for the job, then you use it. So that's educational duct tape right there. So first up, I've got an educational duct tape question for you, and we'll see what educational technology takeaways we could find from it. So here's the question. How can students create content to teach their classmates about a historical figure? So I was thinking here, like maybe you jigsaw in your class all of the presidents or something that you're studying, and each kid has a different figure. So they are creating some sort of resource, some content that teaches their classmates about that figure. So what would you do?
So one of my favorite people is Ryan O'Donnell, and he's Creative Edtech on Twitter. And he taught history for a long time, and he has these fantastic templates on his website. And most of them are free, and where the kids can create a Time magazine cover and then Time magazine articles to go along with it. And he has a people template and quite a few different ones, Twitter, Facebook, and all sorts of like relevant media sources where the kids could go through and learn about whatever a president or whatever historical figure. And then they could create a Time magazine or a Twitter profile or a Facebook page about that figure, and then teach their classmates about it that way. So it's a really relevant way to do it. And it's so cool. We've done it with the kids. I have a hyperdoc that I created with Lisa Gardino, and on the American Revolution at the end, our 5th graders create they use the Time magazine, and they went through and used it to create a Time magazine article about one of the figures that they learned about in the hyperdoc unit.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the things that I thought of first when I thought about this question. Ryan's templates that he makes are awesome. They are mostly Google Slides. Some are Google Drawings. It seems like some are slides and some are drawings. It's pretty much the same tool. But yeah, like you said, it's basically the skeleton of a Time magazine cover or a People magazine cover or whatever it might be. And then you can kind of go in and add the picture and add the topics and stuff that go with it. Those are really awesome tools.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah. Now, one other thing I thought about that kind of relates to what you were saying there with Ryan's stuff. Have you heard of the Ed, Tweet, Text, and Snap Chrome extension?
No, I have not heard of this.
So it's a Chrome extension that helps you generate fake tweets, text message conversations, or Snapchat snaps. So once you load the Chrome extension, you click on it and then you select, do I want to create a tweet or a Snapchat snap or a text message conversation? And then it brings up like the boxes to type in who's posting the tweet or who's sending the text and things like that. And then type in the text that goes with it.
Wow.
And it generates like a picture for you. So it's really similar to what Ryan's templates do, except it actually kind of makes it for you, and then you just save it as a picture.
That's cool. I have not heard of that.
Yeah, and it's created by an educator. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but I'm definitely going to put a link into the show notes about it. But yeah, you just load the Chrome extension, click on what you want, and then kind of type in the information. So you can mimic like two historical figures having a conversation or George Washington tweeting something and add in what picture goes with it. So it's pretty similar to what Ryan does. I think the big difference is like Ryan's Twitter one and stuff like that. You actually put in like the profile text and the image along the top as well as the profile image. And I don't think the Ed, Tweet, Text, and Snap extension does that, but it's a really cool tool. It's really quick and easy to use. Like it can almost be like practically like a bell ringer activity for the kids to do. It would probably take 10 or 15 minutes to make them. And then they could post them.
It'd be cool to have two kids take their two historical figures after they've created a Time magazine or a Twitter profile or whatever, and then have them create a conversation between their two characters.
Oh, yeah, that'd be really fun.
And have them do that. That'd be really cool to see how they would mimic the conversation between the two.
Yeah, that would be neat. When I first tried out the texting feature, I was mimicking a conversation between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr.
Oh, nice. Yeah, perfect. That'd be so cool.
I kept getting to put in Burr, sir, in that because that's one of my favorite parts of the play of the musical. Is the Burr, sir, how it ends in every line with that. So I was adding in lots of those. So that's a great tool. And one thing I like about some of Ryan's templates is it's not just the cover of the magazine. Sometimes it has the pages inside of it.
Yep.
So it could be, you put George Washington, let's say, on the cover, and then on the inside page, like the next slide of the Google Slides, you're actually putting the cover story that relates to it with more pictures, which I think is really cool.
Right. Yeah, it's a great resource.
Great tool. Another option I want to share here is FlipGrid. I've never tried this, but I'd love to try this. Using FlipGrid and having each student respond as if they are their figure. So they've got to write a script, talk in whatever kind of voice they think the person might have. Maybe if they want to be creative, use a mask or something like that. And then actually talk as that historical figure. And then they could watch each other's posts in that grid.
That'd be cool.
One other, like if you really want to kick it up a notch, you could use something like Chatterpix or Blabberize or like a Google Slide stop motion to make it look like you really are that person. But I think that's an optional for fun thing, but it'd be nice to have them talking as that person.
We also use at the end of this unit is to have our students create, this is as a computer science teacher, I have my students create a conversation and a story in Scratch, sharing about historical figures or maybe like a battle scene or something from the American Revolution, and then share it that way so that they are actually programming something and then they're sharing it out using Scratch.
Oh, that's so cool. So, and they could actually put in audio and stuff like that too, if they choose to, or it could be just text-based. So then they're getting to create something. They're practicing some computer science and programming stuff. They're getting to be creative, and they are representing their knowledge of that content area, which is in this case, the historical figure or whatever. That's cool. I love that.
Yeah, and I'll share that unit with you, and you can add that to the show notes. And it can be adapted for many different grade levels.
That's super cool, and content areas too, because it doesn't necessarily just have to be Alexander Burr talking to. I combine names there. Alexander Hamilton talking to Aaron Burr. It could be some scientists, or it could be two different chemical solutions talking to each other. It could be a whole lot of things. It doesn't have to be people in the pictures, although it certainly would be fun if it was.
Yep, it could go for lots of different content areas.
Yep. Okay, so how about some more educational duct tape? So what's your question here?
Okay, so my question is, how can teachers prepare students for jobs that don't yet exist?
So there's a lot of different ways we could do that, right? And I think a lot of the things we talk about in Educational Duct Tape podcast in the previous episodes is where we're getting the kids to be creators, and we're getting the kids to be collaborators, and we're getting the kids to make choices and choose the way they want to represent their thinking and stuff like that. And that all definitely is helping them prepare for those jobs that don't exist. But the answer I actually want to give here, which you just alluded to, is using Scratch. So I currently coach a coding club. We call it coding club because that's what the kids wanted to name it, but it's bigger than just coding. It really is, more of a computer science club. And I give the kids an option on what they want to use, and different kids choose different things. Some years I have barely any kids choose Scratch, and they all want to go learn Python or JavaScript or something. But this year in particular, they are just loving using Scratch. And what's so cool about it is they're all creating their own games. And these games blow my mind, the games that these kids are making. And they're like real games. Like you would actually want to go play these games. But what they'll do is every practice and things like that, they will work on something, and they're working on their own too, on their own time. And then they'll have their classmates, their teammates, their club mates play the game during our coding club meetings. And I'm not instructing them to do it. They're just doing it, which is such an amazing design thinking skill or engineering design process skill, to have someone else try out your creation, your invention, your game, whatever it is you're making, and watch them interact with it and get their feedback on it. And I'll watch them having their classmates play it, and they're watching and they're like, oh, wow, you got by that obstacle really easily. And then they'll think, well, I need to go back and change that. Or, oh, that obstacle is impossible. Or, oh, it glitched right there where you were playing it. So they could just sit back and observe what their classmates doing, which is such a big skill for our kids to have for their futures, because number one, they need creativity and the design thinking skills for their futures. They need the ability to work in a lot of different mediums, and practicing that creativity is huge for them. But also, we have such an entrepreneurial culture now, and you really need to understand the needs of the people and the experience of the people, your audience, to be able to, be successful in a lot of these careers that I think are in our future. And so by creating things and then observing other people interacting with them, I just think that's a huge skill for them to have.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, and go ahead. I bet I took over part of your answer there. So what's your answer? What would you do to prepare students for jobs that don't yet exist?
So yeah, exactly what I was saying too is computer science. Teaching computer science starting as young as TK, which is transitional kindergarten or kindergarten, teaching kids computer science. And I know a lot of people, when they hear the term computer science, they immediately think of coding or programming, but it's so much more than that. Computer science is there's a quote from code.org where it says, computer science is learning how to use the power of computers to solve big problems. And so in computer science, in my class, we don't just code. We talk about hardware and software and what's inside a computer and how computers work and how we use these computers to solve problems. Mm-hmm. For example, I showed the kids the new Google Slides. Well, it's not that new anymore, but how Google Slides now has closed captioning. And I showed them that. And we talked about how somebody used computers to solve the problem of kids who may need to read it, or students who are hard of hearing, or all of these reasons why we would need closed captioning on Google Slides. And somebody used a computer and they decided to create this for other people, and now it's free and now it's available to everyone. So the kids, and I told them that they could do that as young as, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, they could be creating something that could solve a problem that could help other people. And so we look at it from that broad view of how are we using computers to solve big problems? And starting small, it's important to start really, really young and to be looking at how are we solving problems using computers, not just to play games or to consume information. That's not what our computers should just be used for. They should be used to create. They should be used to think critically and collaborate and connect and to solve problems together. And they use the computers that way. So.
Oh, I love that answer. I love what you're saying there, is that you're teaching the kids not just to be problem solvers. I don't know where I've first heard this, so I don't know who to cite for this, but you're not just teaching them to be problem solvers, but you're teaching them to be problem finders. So they're looking for like that closed captioning thing, like when you're watching somebody present from Google Slides, and we know it's not best practice to have all of your text in the slide. So how do we help somebody who can't hear or whatever? And then closed captioning was the answer. So there are people that are finding those problems and then solving those problems. It makes me think of Don Wettrick's podcast, Start Ed Up, which is one of my favorites. He often says that he likes to teach his students, like I said there, not to be problem solvers, but to be problem finders. But he also teaches his kids to look for those things that are inconvenience and are bothering people and run to those things, because those are the problems that need to be solved, that are huge opportunities for the person who figures out the solution to them.
Right.
And you're teaching elementary schoolers to do that. That's so amazing.
It's amazing. And it also makes me think of another podcast that uses problems in education and to find the answers using something like duct tape.
That's interesting. That sounds like one I would like.
It does. It sounds like something we would like. So
let's put a link to that in the show notes.
That'd be great. Please do. I think that people would, it might even get to like 20 listeners at that point if people realize that that's what this is about.
That's perfect.
So a lot of teachers then, we talk about this, this global way of thinking about computer science. And of course, the more we talk about it like this, the scarier it seems. And teachers just don't know where to start, because you start saying, we need to really start teaching computer science to, kindergartners. And you see the look on these poor kindergarten teachers' faces, and they're like, I am trying to teach them to sit down and, talk to each other and to use the bathroom. And so where can we find these resources that'll help us to give the students the foundation they're going to need to then be interested in computer science and go on to middle school and high school and really dive deeper into it? And one amazing resource is available from some friends of mine across the Bay in San Francisco, and it's csinsf.org. And they have created curriculum totally free that's available to anyone that goes to their website. And they have lessons, they have printable resources, they have resources you can use for PD. And that's what I use in my computer science class to teach my students computer science.
Wow. And so this is based out of San Francisco, but it's available for anybody to use?
Anybody. Anybody can go to csinsf.org and you can see their curriculum. And the great thing about the K2 curriculum is that the first unit in all of their they have 3 different levels, it's completely unplugged. So the kids aren't even touching a computer. The entire unit is unplugged. And so the students are learning about hardware and software and inputs and outputs, and they're building their own little mini paper computers, which is by far the favorite lesson my K2 students have. And they're learning about computer science in a hands-on way, and they're not even touching a computer, which is a great way to start because, again, you hear computer science and immediately it goes to, well, you have to be touching a computer and you have to be doing coding. And this kind of just blows that out of the water and just shows the kids what computer science really is starting in kindergarten, which is amazing.
How cool that their favorite thing is actually the non-technology thing in there. And it just shows that it's not just technology that kids like, it's being able to be creative that they like. Sometimes it doesn't have to have a plug on it, right? If they get to create and kind of go their own way and lead their path and it's like Dan Pink says, right? If they have that kind of autonomy over it, then they're going to be more engaged in it and they have fun, even though they're not using technology.
Right. And we're talking about like really deep concepts and really important concepts like inputs and outputs. And, I tell the kids, you need an input device and you need an output device. And the kids are like, oh, okay, well, let me create a mouse and I'm going to create a 3D printer. And these are first graders. Mm-hmm. So they're understanding what these things are again. And like you said, we're not even touching a computer. They're building it and they're looking at it and they're making a little 3D printer using paper, but they know what it is and they understand what it does. Mm-hmm. And then the 3.5 curriculum that I use, we use Scratch as well. And some code.org lessons, and again, some unplugged lessons that we use to teach the foundations of computer science. And my kids they're starting to surpass me because we've been doing this now for 3 years, and the kids are just, like you said, what you've seen with your students, mind blowing what they can do. And they're just so excited to work together and to learn and to share what they've created with one another. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking at their curriculum online, their scope and sequence, and I'll put the link to csnsf.org. Is pretty easy, but it'll be in the show notes anyhow. And so it looks like they break their scope and sequence up into a couple different bands. So there's computational thinking, there's computing practice and programming, there's programming skills, there's examples of suggested languages and platforms, there's computers and communication devices, there's community, global, and ethical impacts, and then there's collaboration, which shows how big computer science is. Like you're saying, it's not just learning HTML, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Right? And I think I really like the way that you're kind of framing this, because especially with that, like that paper computer thing, when these kiddos that you have that are 6-year-olds or 7-year-olds or 8-year-olds, when they are out in their work lives, 20 years from now, they might not use a computer mouse. Like that might not even be a thing that they use anymore. And you're talking about 3D printers, like 3D printers might be a thing of the past because we've created, I don't know, like hologram creators or who knows, something we haven't even thought of yet. So instead of just focusing on teaching them how to use the tech they have now, you're teaching them how to kind of think about the tech that they have now and how to think about things and how they're utilized and why they're utilized and how their audience and people in the world are utilizing these tools and the needs these people have, because those kinds of skills will work no matter what happens to technology over the next few decades, right? Like you're teaching them a framework of how to interact with technology, not just about the currently existing technology.
Right. And a great example of that, of a lesson like that, is the kindergarten curriculum. I think it's the second lesson where you bring out a box or a backpack or something and you tell the kids, this is not a box. And you tell them to imagine what it could be. And it's not a box. This is actually an ice cream making machine. And the kids are like, whoa. And you show them all the inputs. Like, I'm going to use buttons as my input and I'm going to press these buttons and out is going to 3D print ice cream. And so the kids, and then they go around and then you challenge them. Okay, now you go around the room and you look at different things and you see it in a different way. That is not a chair. And they start looking at it. And I had some kids are like, that's not a clock. You dance around in front of it and out pops jelly beans. And they were coming up with the greatest things. And that's not a box. It's actually a machine that cleans your entire house. And I told this little kiddo, I said, well, when you invent that, please let me know, because I would definitely buy that machine from you.
Right.
And so the kids they're creating, like, they're looking at it, but they're looking at it in a different way. And the fact that we're starting this in kindergarten where they're looking at a chair and saying, okay, that's not a chair. That's a transportation device. It's going to take me back in time. That's so cool. It's so cool to watch the kids. Their minds are just like, and they're starting, like, you can start to see them build off one another, because then everybody was making jelly beans and gummy bears, but they're all building on one another. We don't steal each other's ideas. We think about it in a different way and we go through and we create together. And it's a really cool lesson. And again, it's all free and it's all on these people at the team at CSNSF is just phenomenal. I can't thank them enough for sharing what they have with us.
Yeah, what a cool mindset that they're building in kids and that you're building in kids by using it. Because you're absolutely right. Like if you look at the technologies that we use now, they're built on the technologies that we had last year and 2 years ago and 10 years ago and 20 years ago, and they're just evolving to meet our needs. So somebody looks at the original computer and says, well, it would be nice if it did this, and it'd be nice if it connected to the internet, and it would be nice if I could record a podcast and send it to people. It'd be nice if they could listen to it on the go from their phone. It'd be nice if their headphones could be unplugged so they don't have to be attached to the phone all the time. And you're teaching kids that innovative process of doing that mindset of doing that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's the engineering design process that we're looking at. We show the kids, the latest iPhone, and we talk to them like, do you think that they stopped with iPhone 1? No, they got feedback and then they built on it, and we continue to build on, and that's what the kids are doing, and we're building on it and we're growing and we're making new things every day. And then it goes back to we're providing and we're meeting a need. We're either providing entertainment or we're helping people, but we're solving a problem. We're doing something with this technology that we're making, and we're the inventors. And that's a pretty cool thing to get kids to be thinking of themselves in that way at such a young age.
Yeah. So one thing I'm liking on their website in that scope and sequence that I'm in is it does have a band of examples of suggested platforms. So you can look and say, I'm a second grade teacher. What should I have my kids using? Which is wonderful. But it also, that's within all these other layers of other stuff you should be working with your kids on. So a second grader maybe should be using Scratch Junior, Code.org Course 1, Codable, Lightbot Junior, Bbots, and the Foos, but also they should be learning the programming skill of sequences. And also they should be demonstrating open-ended problem solving. And also they should be creating algorithms and decomposing problems into smaller, more manageable parts. So it's got all these different pieces in here, which I think is really fantastic. And even though it's a curriculum that you could easily make a course out of, like you're doing, it is a lot of mindset kind of stuff that could fit into really any classroom, right?
Right. And you start, as you dive into these lessons and the kids start to learn, you see all of these concepts in other subject areas. Like one of my teachers that I worked with, we talked about algorithms, like the steps in the process and sequence, how we apply that to writing. You can use this in writing, and we start to see it, and they're thinking, then we start the computational thinking piece, or debugging, finding a problem and solving it. I was reading with my son, and, of course we talk about computer science all the time, and I come home and we do computer science on the weekends for fun. Nice. And he was reading his book, and he missed a word, and he comes back and he goes, "Oh, Mom, I debugged it. I figured out the right word." And I was like, "You're absolutely right. You're debugging the problem. As you're reading, you fixed it. You went back and fixed it. You debugged it." And so the kids are starting to see how they can use these skills that they're learning in computer science in other subject areas. Yeah,
they're great, as we call them, soft skills and 21st century skills for kids to have. And what a great way to build them up. Yeah. So I got to give a shout out here. I'm looking on the page, and it looks like on the scope and sequence, it mentions Brian Tuareg from San Francisco Unified School District. So I don't know Brian, but I'm giving him a shout out right now, Brian, because this is awesome. And anybody else involved in this project, this is awesome. And hopefully maybe we can connect to get them on the show in the future, because this is some really cool stuff. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, I will give Bill Marsland and Owen Perry a shout out. And Owen actually wrote a guest post for Ditch That Textbook back in November. And so we'll add that. And he talks about ways to bring computer science and go beyond the hour of code. And he gave a bunch of cool resources. So we can add that in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, I think that does it. We've filled our listeners' ears with so much awesome stuff right now. I think we're going to overwhelm them if we keep going.
Okay, yeah, let's not. I have a tendency to do that, so please stop me.
People's brains are going to explode with all these wonderful ideas. So I hope everybody out there will follow Carly on Twitter at Carly Moura. Check out her blog at carlymoura.blogspot.com. All of her PD resources are at bit.ly/carlymoura. And you could reach out to her if you need to contact her at kdmoura@gmail.com. And she and her son, Jake, are presenting computer science in K-2 at their district STEM and EdTech symposium in late February. And she plans to share those. How awesome is that? You and your son presenting together.
We're so pumped. I saw Tracy Bondi present with her son a few years ago, and I was like, my Jake is we're going to present together one day, and we're finally going to be able to do it, and we're so excited. It's going to be fun.
I already know he's awesome too, because his name's Jake, so he has to be awesome.
Obviously.
So how old is Jake?
He's 7.
He's 7. Awesome. My daughter is 7 too, so I know that age. That's a fun age. She's in the middle of my 3.
It's so fun. It's a fun age. We're loving it.
Hi, Jake. Jake, you're doing awesome things with computer science. I hope you'll play that for him so he hears that.
I will.
All right. Well, again, I hope everybody follows Carly out there. And again, Carly, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing all that awesome stuff.
Sure. Thanks. It was really fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Carly Moura, that was just so awesome. She had so many good ideas. Such a blast to have on the show. So glad to finally find out what Carly likes on her pizza and watches on Netflix. But that's csnsf.org resource. I am so psyched about that. I can't wait to check it out more. I hope you guys will all go follow Carly again on Twitter at Carly Moura, and all the other links and stuff that I shared in the show notes, and check out csnsf.org. As always, let's wrap it up by showing some love to some of our loyal duct tapers. First up, I'm honored to now have 21 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, thanks to the one new reviewer that hopped on there in the last week. These reviews make me so gosh darn happy. Gosh darn it, that make me so happy. that I'm going to share one every week. So here's one from Lisa Marie Bennett, who you can find on Twitter at BlueSquareX. Lisa says, I am loving Jake's approach in his new podcast. He focuses on how to solve educational problems or issues with tools instead of, hey, here's a cool new app, use it. I think that's supposed to be said, hey, here's a cool new app, use it. His pacing and personality are a joy to listen to. I've added this to my morning commute podcasts. I can't wait to hear more. Thank you so much, Lisa Marie. These reviews just make me so happy to hear. So thank you to those people who've been leaving them. We're going to keep highlighting some of those on upcoming episodes. On Twitter, dozens of people tweeted this past week with the hashtag EduDuckTape. Here are a few of my favorites. At Amused7, that's LJ, said, I have just discovered the Educational Duct Tape podcast, and I'm, all caps, loving it. I can't believe how much information you could fit into each episode. Hashtag EduDuckTape. Thanks, LJ. They just keep getting longer and longer, though. I hope that I'm packing each episode with just the right amount of info. Not overwhelming, but plenty of value to be found. At Arendale Music says, have you listened to the Educational Duct Tape podcast yet? How did we get by without it? Hashtag EduDuckTape. And thanks, Jake Miller Tech. Thank you, Arendale Music, whoever you are. I'm sure that's the position you teach, not your name. But thank you so much. This is one of those ones that made me blush and smile when I read it. At RF Peterson 80, Richard said, that sticker is great. He was referring to somebody who tweeted a picture of their Educational Duct Tape podcast sticker that they won in one of the early contests. And he said, I think we need to see an EDU Duck, D-U-C-K, tape sticker. Hashtag EduDuckTape. I think I may need to make one of these soon. This is a really good idea, Richard. I think that might have to happen in the future. At Mr. Oris Tech, who was our guest from back in episode 5, I think, said, love that at Jake Miller Tech's hashtag EduDuckTape episode 6, and Dan Gallagher talked about COPA law and making sure your tech tool has proper terms of use. I've been compiling these in an organized way to help our teachers, and he shared a link, which I'm going to stick in the show notes because it really is an awesome resource. I have two favorite things about this. One is that these people that are guests on the show just keep coming back and sharing and participating and staying in the community, which is awesome and exciting, but also that they're being so generous too, and that Alex says it's a great thing to share that, again, I'm going to stick in the show notes so you can get to it. At JShanter22, Jamie says, my takeaway from this week's awesome hashtag EduDuckTape episode with Sean J. Fahey and Jake Miller Tech, and then she included an awesome little infographic. I think she made it in Adobe Spark Posts, and I'm going to share a link to it in the show notes because it's just so awesome. I love seeing stuff like this where somebody actually created something that relates to the show. It's such an honor to have something like that happen. At Creeds_crew, Mike says, my favorite part of the hashtag EduDuckTape podcast is how it feels like I'm sitting in a room just kicking around ideas. No, I know the best way. Instead, it's we are learning together. Love that. Great job, Jake Miller Tech. And I agree, Mike. I think this is the way that educational technology should be. There is no best way. There might be some better ways, and there might be a best way for your teaching style and your classroom with your students and your subject area and whatever might be happening in your classroom at any given time, but there's not always one right answer. And in general, if you're doing anything that's innovative and trying new things, you're doing good things for your students, and there isn't just one right way. So thank you, Mike, for reaffirming kind of my mission there with that. Next up, at J Huff, I'm assuming it's pronounced Hough 24, Joshua says, OMG, I just finished listening to episode 5 of the hashtag EduDuckTape podcast with Jake Miller Tech and at Mr. Oris Tech. I feel like I now have the answer to the most nagging teaching questions I have had for the past 10 years. Feels like you guys just gave me miles of hashtag EduDuckTape. Thank you for this, Joshua. This one is another one that made me blush. It was that gif of the one dwarf from Snow White pulling on his ears and kind of looking all bashful. You know what? It was bashful. Come on, Jake. But this one felt really good to see. But I think what Josh was referring to there was how to get students to choose the ways to show their learning. And Alex and I both showed 2 different ideas back there in episode 5. So thank you, Joshua, for giving us some positive feedback on that. And next up, at Dr. McClard, Dr. MCCLARD, Lance says, catching up on hashtag EduDuckTape, loving it at Jake Miller Tech, loving the EDU problem solved creatively and the fun. Can't wait to find out if at Sean J. Fahey knows what kind of pizza at Carly Moura would order. And guess what? Today, Lance found out. And he was close, but not quite. Next up, since that hashtag EDU duct tape is getting a lot of love on Twitter, I can't list everybody who's used it on Twitter, but I really do appreciate everybody sharing and joining in the conversation there. I do want to share the people that are new tweeters with hashtag EDU duct tape. So we've got at Amused7, at Axeman1962, at Class Palacios, at Creeds_crew, at Dr. McClard, at EDUPodNet, at Arendale Music, at Geo Southern IRC, at Hero City Kevin, at Jay Wigmore, at J Neil UK, at Just Start Tech, at Carly Moura, at Linda Hummer, at Mark Slara, at Mr. Nessie, at Mr. Orr Biology, at N Cronkite, at R Booth 1024, at Super Crystal B, and at Virtual GIF. And finally, let's share from a few duct tapers on the educational duct tape FlipGrid community. Today, we've got two Sarahs to hear from. The first of our two Sarahs actually left a longer message and suggested a game that we should play sometime on the podcast. And I'm going to save that for a future episode. But first, let me get her appearance in here onto the show.
Hey, Jake. It's Sarah Kiefer from Cincinnati, Ohio. Loving the podcast, so keep up the good work.
And like I said, I'm cutting Sarah off there because she had a great idea for a game. And Sarah, I promise I'm saving it for later. Now let's jump in and hear from our other Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Frumhold. I am a digital learning coach in North Texas. I work at 2 elementary schools supporting teachers and students in their use of technology. I just finished the first episode of the podcast and I am hooked. My one word for 2019 is connect. And so that podcast episode could not have come at a better time. I am so looking forward to diving into the resources that Anne shared and connecting the students at my schools with as many people and classes and places and scientists and Antarctica and everything that Anne shared. So that is super, super cool. I'm loving the second episode as well. I had to stop and do a little FlipGrid. But Jake just makes me laugh and I look forward to many more episodes to come.
And that does it for episode 7 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening. And those of you that are still here after an hour, thank you so much. That really means a lot to me. I'll see you all next week.
Thank you for listening to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Please visit eduducttape.com to join the discussion, share possible topics, inquire about being a guest, or contact Jake. And remember, duct is spelled with a T, not a quack quack K.